Listen carefully, because this might be the most uncomfortable truth you'll hear today. Nobody is sitting awake at night trying to figure you out the way you keep trying to figure everyone else out. Nobody is carrying your pain inside their chest the way you carry it. And no, that's not cruelty. That's reality. Most of your exhaustion right now isn't coming from life itself. It's coming from waiting for someone to finally understand you, waiting for a text, waiting for an apology, waiting for closure, waiting for people to care the exact way you care. And while you're waiting, your own life is quietly slipping through your hands. Because the truth is, people are consumed by their own chaos, their own bills, their own fears, their own insecurities, their own loneliness, their own survival. Even the people who love you can still fail to show up emotionally, not because they hate you, but because they're already drowning inside themselves. But your mind doesn't interpret it that way. The moment someone goes silent, your brain starts creating stories. Maybe I'm not important. Maybe I'm forgettable. Maybe I wasn't enough. And suddenly, one delayed reply becomes a personal attack on your worth. That's how people lose themselves. Not through one massive tragedy, but through thousands of tiny emotional reactions. Overthinking, checking, waiting, replaying conversations, trying to decode mixed signals from people who can't even understand themselves. And the darkest part? You start performing your life instead of living it. You explain too much. You seek validation too much. You try to look strong instead of becoming strong. You shape your personality around approval. You start treating attention like love, but attention is cheap. Real respect isn't. A person can watch everything you do and still not care about your peace. A person can text you every day and still disappear the moment life gets difficult. A person can give you attention without ever giving you loyalty. That's why emotionally weak people stay trapped, because they confuse being noticed with being valued. But the moment you stop begging the world to emotionally rescue you, everything changes. You stop living like you're on trial. You stop managing every opinion. You stop chasing closure from people who already moved on mentally. You stop trying to explain your growth to people committed to misunderstanding you. And for the first time, your energy comes back home. That's where power begins. Not in loud confidence, not in fake alpha behavior, not in impressing people. Real power begins the moment your emotional stability stops depending on other people's reactions. Because emotionally dangerous people understand something most people never will. The world respects visible discipline, not invisible excuses. Nobody cares how painful your backstory was if your habits still destroy your future. Nobody cares how misunderstood you feel if you keep abandoning yourself for approval. Nobody cares about your potential if your actions never become consistent. Harsh? Maybe. But freeing? Because once you accept that nobody's coming to save you, you finally stop waiting. You start building. You train your body even when nobody notices. You fix your sleep even when nobody praises you. You stop chasing people who only value your availability. You stop leaking energy into dead conversations. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop announcing your transformation before it's real. And slowly, your life starts becoming solid. Not because people changed, because you did. Now rejection doesn't destroy you. Silence doesn't terrify you. Mixed signals don't control your nervous system anymore. Why? Because your peace is no longer sitting inside someone else's hands. That's emotional independence. And emotional independence is one of the rarest forms of power in modern life. Most people can't survive one cold message without spiraling. One ignored text ruins their day. One opinion changes their mood. One rejection makes them question their entire identity. But the person who masters themselves, they feel disappointment without collapsing. They feel pain without becoming bitter. They feel loneliness without abandoning themselves for attention. That kind of person becomes impossible to manipulate. And that's why silence becomes powerful. Because silence reveals truth faster than words ever will. The moment you stop chasing, you discover who actually values you. The moment you stop over-explaining, you discover who only respected the version of you that had no boundaries. The moment you go quiet, you realize who cared about you and who only cared about access to you. That realization hurts, but it also frees you, because now you stop investing your heart into people who only consume your energy. You stop treating inconsistency like love. You stop calling emotional exhaustion connection. And finally, you return to yourself. That's the entire point of this video. Not becoming cold, not becoming emotionless, not isolating yourself from humanity. The goal is becoming emotionally sovereign. A person whose mind cannot be hijacked by every silence, every opinion, every rejection, every mood shift. A person who can still love deeply without losing themselves in the process. And here's the strange thing that happens after that transformation. People begin respecting you more, not because you demanded it, because you stop begging for it. You stop chasing attention, and your presence becomes heavier. You stop explaining yourself, and your actions become louder. You stop performing confidence, and real confidence quietly appears. Because confidence was never supposed to come from applause. It was supposed to come from evidence. Evidence that you can rely on yourself. Evidence that you can stay disciplined without external motivation. Evidence that you can survive rejection without falling apart. Evidence that you can walk away from what destroys your peace. That's why private discipline matters more than public validation. Anybody can post motivation. Very few people can stay consistent in silence. Anybody can talk about change. Very few people can rebuild themselves when nobody's watching. And that's exactly where your future is built. Not in public approval, in private repetition. So stop wasting years trying to be understood by everybody. Most people are too busy trying to survive themselves. Instead, build a life that speaks for you. Build habits that make your confidence undeniable. Build standards that protect your peace. Build boundaries that stop your energy from leaking into the wrong people. Build a nervous system that doesn't panic every time someone pulls away. And most importantly, stop waiting for people to care in the exact way you hope they would. Because the moment you stop waiting, you finally begin living. Comment below, I choose myself. And if this video hits something deep inside you, subscribe to Silent Authority, because here, we don't teach fake motivation. We build minds that cannot be controlled. Number 2, the most dangerous habit is caring too much about people who barely think about you. Most people destroy their own peace without realizing it. Not because life is cruel, not because the world is against them, but because they keep emotionally investing in people who are mentally somewhere else. You wait for responses that never come. You replay conversations that the other person already forgot. You analyze someone's tone for hours, while they moved on in 5 minutes. And slowly, your entire emotional life becomes controlled by people who aren't even thinking about you that deeply. That's the trap. You think attachment means love. You think constant emotional obsession means connection. You think overthinking proves you care. No, it proves you abandoned yourself. Because the more your mind revolves around someone else's behavior, the less energy you have left to build your own life. Read that again internally. Every hour spent decoding mixed signals is an hour stolen from your future. Every night spent refreshing your phone is energy that could have gone into your body, your money, your discipline, your purpose. But people don't realize this until it's too late. They become emotionally addicted to uncertainty. One message gives them dopamine. One silence destroys their mood. One compliment makes them feel alive. One cold reply makes them question their entire worth. That's not love. That's psychological dependency. And dependency always creates weakness. Because the moment someone controls your emotional state, they control your behavior. That's why emotionally reactive people are so easy to manipulate. Give them attention, they chase harder. Ignore them, they panic. Give them mixed signals, they become obsessed. Their nervous system becomes programmable. And modern society profits from exactly that. Social media, validation culture, attention addiction. Everything trains you to emotionally react, to constantly seek approval, to constantly monitor who noticed you, who liked you, who chose you. But powerful people move differently. They understand a brutal truth. Attention is not achievement. Being desired is not the same as being respected. Being noticed is not the same as being valuable. And being emotionally attached to everyone usually means you're disconnected from yourself. That's why dangerous people protect their focus aggressively. They stop checking constantly. They stop explaining themselves endlessly. They stop trying to emotionally rescue every relationship because they understand something most people never learn. Your attention is your life force. Wherever your attention goes, your future follows. So if your attention is trapped inside other people's opinions, your own life starts shrinking. That's why self-respect changes everything. Self-respect means your mood no longer depends on being chosen. Your confidence no longer depends on being praised. Your peace no longer depends on constant reassurance. And once that shift happens, your entire presence changes. You stop chasing. You stop forcing conversations. You stop begging people to understand your value. You become calmer, cleaner mentally, harder to manipulate. And ironically, that's when people start respecting you more. Because the world senses emotional desperation instantly. People can feel when your nervous system is starving for validation. They can feel when you need approval to survive. But they can also feel when you've emotionally detached from the need to impress anyone. That energy becomes magnetic, not loud, not performative, not attention-seeking, just grounded. That's the difference between weak confidence and silent power. Weak confidence constantly asks, do they like me? Silent power asks, am I building the life I respect? One creates anxiety, the other creates freedom. And once you experience that freedom, you stop wasting years trying to emotionally convince people to care. You let actions reveal everything naturally. If someone values you, they'll show consistency. If someone respects you, they'll respect your boundaries. If someone only wants access to your energy, silence will expose them eventually. That's why emotionally mature people stop chasing clarity from chaotic people. They stop begging for closure from emotionally unavailable people. They stop trying to explain their worth to people committed to misunderstanding them. Instead, they redirect all that wasted emotional energy back into themselves, into discipline, into health, into purpose, into solitude, into mastery, and slowly, their life becomes heavier. Not emotionally heavier, powerfully heavier. Their words carry more weight. Their presence feels calmer. Their decisions become cleaner. Their standards rise. Because emotionally independent people stop leaking energy into places that drain them. Remember this carefully. Every person who constantly steals your focus is stealing pieces of your future. So choose wisely who gets access to your mind. Because your mind is either becoming stronger or becoming distracted. There is no middle ground. Comment below, my energy belongs to me. And subscribe to Silent Authority. Because the strongest minds are not built through noise. They're built through discipline, silence, and emotional control. Number 3, why weak men need constant attention. There's a reason some people cannot stay alone in silence. A reason they constantly post, constantly talk, constantly seek reactions from others. Because silence forces a person to face themselves. And most people are terrified of what they'll find there. That's why weak minds become addicted to attention. Not because attention feels good, but because distraction helps them escape themselves temporarily. The phone becomes anesthesia. Notifications become emotional oxygen. Validation becomes survival. And without realizing it, their entire identity becomes outsourced to other people's reactions. One compliment makes them feel powerful. One unfollow destroys their confidence. One ignored message ruins their entire day. That's slavery, not physical slavery, psychological slavery. Because the moment your emotional state depends on external attention, you stop belonging to yourself. And modern society quietly encourages this weakness. Everything around you is designed to hijack your attention. Short videos, infinite scrolling, constant comparison, endless dopamine loops. The system profits from distracted minds. Because distracted people are easier to influence, easier to manipulate, easier to emotionally control. That's why truly disciplined people feel rare now. A man who can sit alone without needing constant stimulation, without checking his phone every 5 minutes, without seeking validation from strangers, becomes psychologically dangerous because his mind is no longer owned by the outside world. Most people never reach that level. They confuse visibility with value. They think being seen means being important. They think popularity equals power. But history proves the opposite. The most powerful minds were often the quietest. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet spent nights alone writing private thoughts nobody was supposed to read. Machiavelli understood human nature deeply because he observed more than he performed. The strongest people are usually not the loudest people in the room. They're the ones least desperate for attention. That's what creates presence, not performance, not noise, not fake confidence, internal stability. Because when a person stops emotionally begging for reactions, their energy changes completely. They become calmer, sharper, more intentional. Their words slow down. Their movements become deliberate. Their emotional reactions lose intensity. And suddenly, people start paying attention to them naturally. Ironically, the less you chase attention, the more powerful your presence becomes, because desperation repels, but grounded silence attracts. That's why emotionally intelligent people become selective with access, selective with conversations, selective with friendships, selective with who gets their energy, not out of arrogance, out of self-respect. They understand that every unnecessary interaction drains mental clarity. Every chaotic person steals emotional bandwidth. Every distraction pulls focus away from purpose, and purpose requires protection. You cannot build an exceptional life with a distracted nervous system. Impossible. That's why discipline matters more than motivation. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation disappears when feelings change. Discipline survives regardless of feelings. Weak people wait until they feel ready. Strong people move regardless. That difference alone changes entire destinies. And here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to hear. Most people are not exhausted because life is hard. They're exhausted because their attention is scattered everywhere. Too many conversations, too much validation seeking, too much emotional monitoring, too much noise. Their mind never rests, and a restless mind can never become powerful. Power requires stillness, the ability to pause before reacting, the ability to sit with discomfort without escaping into distraction, the ability to remain emotionally steady when chaos appears. That's real mental strength, not motivational speeches, not fake alpha behavior, not pretending not to care. Real strength is nervous system control, and once you master that, your entire life changes. Because now people can no longer manipulate your emotions through inconsistency. Silence no longer scares you. Loneliness no longer weakens you. Rejection no longer destroys your identity. You become internally anchored. And internally anchored people become extremely difficult to break. That's why solitude becomes necessary at certain levels of growth. Not permanent isolation, strategic separation from noise. Because clarity only appears when distraction disappears. And the strongest transformations in human history always happened in silence first. Before the results, before the recognition, before the applause, there was solitude, discipline, repetition, internal war. That's where real confidence is born. Not from compliments, from evidence. Evidence that you can trust yourself. Evidence that you can survive discomfort. Evidence that you can stay focused while everyone else is distracted. That's the kind of confidence the world cannot fake. And once you build it, you stop needing external validation completely, because now your life is no longer driven by attention, it's driven by purpose. Comment below, I control my mind, and subscribe to Silent Authority. Because weak minds chase noise, strong minds build power in silence. Number 4, the silent advantage of becoming emotionally unreachable. There comes a moment in a man's life where he realizes something dangerous. The more emotionally available he is to everyone, the weaker he becomes internally. Not because emotions are weakness, but because uncontrolled emotional access destroys focus. Most people today are too reachable. Anyone can ruin their mood. Anyone can interrupt their peace. Anyone can trigger their nervous system with one message, one opinion, one cold tone. That means their inner world has no security, no walls, no discipline, no filtration system. And when your mind has no boundaries, chaos enters freely. That's why emotionally intelligent people become harder to access over time. Not colder, not arrogant, intentional. They stop reacting instantly. They stop explaining every feeling. They stop making themselves constantly available for people who only consume energy. Because they understand something most people ignore. Your emotional availability should be earned, not freely distributed. Weak people give everyone unlimited access to their attention. Strong people protect their inner world carefully. That changes everything. Because once people realize they can't emotionally control you anymore, their entire behavior shifts. The manipulative person loses power over you. The attention seeker becomes confused. The inconsistent person becomes irrelevant. And suddenly, you start seeing people clearly. That's the hidden power of emotional detachment. Not escaping emotions, seeing reality without emotional distortion. Most people never experience that clarity because they're too emotionally invested in outcomes. They need everyone to like them, need constant reassurance, need immediate responses, need emotional certainty every second. And because of that need, they become easy to manipulate. But emotionally sovereign people operate differently. They let silence remain silence. They let people reveal themselves naturally. They stop forcing conversations that already died emotionally. And this is where your power returns. Because the less you chase clarity, the more truth reveals itself automatically. Watch carefully. When you stop texting first constantly, you discover who values your presence naturally. When you stop over-explaining your boundaries, you discover who only respected your lack of boundaries. When you stop emotionally performing for approval, you discover who actually cares about the real version of you. Silence exposes everything eventually. That's why mature people stop trying to control perceptions. They stop trying to look valuable. Instead, they become valuable privately, through discipline, through standards, through emotional control, through consistency nobody sees, and eventually, their life speaks louder than their words ever could. That's the difference between attention-seeking confidence and real internal power. Fake confidence needs witnesses. Real confidence survives in silence. Fake confidence needs applause. Real confidence keeps building even when nobody notices. Fake confidence collapses under rejection. Real confidence becomes stronger through rejection. That's why emotionally detached people feel different. Calmer, harder to read, harder to manipulate, harder to emotionally destabilize. And people feel that energy instantly, not because you became emotionless, because you stopped leaking your emotions everywhere. That alone changes your presence completely. You stop looking needy. You stop looking emotionally dependent. You stop looking desperate for connection. And ironically, that's when people begin respecting you more. Because humans naturally respect emotional stability. They trust people who remain grounded under pressure. They admire people who don't collapse emotionally during discomfort. They feel safe around people who can regulate themselves. That's true strength, not aggression, not loud dominance, not pretending not to care, self-regulation. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most emotional suffering comes from attachment to things outside your control. Other people's moods, other people's opinions, other people's consistency, other people's choices. The moment your peace depends on unstable variables, your nervous system becomes unstable too. That's why Stoic philosophy keeps returning to one brutal principle. Control yourself. Release the rest. Simple, but extremely difficult. Because modern culture trains people to obsess over external reactions constantly. Likes, views, messages, validation, approval. People no longer know how to sit quietly with themselves. And a person who cannot sit alone peacefully will always become emotionally dependent on distraction. That's why solitude matters. Not loneliness, solitude. The ability to enjoy your own mind without needing constant stimulation. That ability alone separates powerful people from emotionally weak people. Because once you enjoy your own company, you stop tolerating low-quality energy just to avoid being alone. You stop chasing inconsistent people. You stop begging for attention. You stop entertaining disrespect out of emotional hunger. And suddenly, your standards rise naturally. That's the silent advantage. You become emotionally complete enough that desperation disappears from your energy completely. And desperation disappearing from a human being is one of the most attractive transformations possible, because now your decisions come from clarity, not fear of abandonment, from standards, not loneliness, from self-respect, not emotional dependency. That's when your life truly changes. Comment below, I protect my peace, and subscribe to Silent Authority, because the strongest people in the world are not emotionally loud, they are emotionally disciplined. Final part, the day you stop needing the world to validate you. At some point, you stop caring about looking powerful, and you become powerful quietly. That's the shift. Not when people start clapping for you, not when everyone suddenly respects you, not when your life becomes perfect, but the moment your inner world stops collapsing over external noise. That's when transformation becomes real. Because most people spend their entire lives emotionally reacting to everything. Every opinion becomes a wound. Every rejection becomes identity damage. Every silence becomes anxiety. Every setback becomes emotional chaos. And they never realize their greatest enemy was never life itself. It was their inability to control their own mind. That's why self-mastery changes everything. The moment you stop needing constant reassurance, your nervous system calms down. The moment you stop begging people to understand your value, your presence becomes heavier. The moment you stop chasing attention, your focus returns. And once focus returns, your life starts expanding fast. Your habits improve. Your body changes. Your standards rise. Your discipline sharpens. Your emotional reactions weaken. Because now, your energy is finally moving toward construction instead of emotional survival. That's the real goal. Not becoming emotionless, not becoming cold, not pretending nothing hurts. The goal is becoming emotionally disciplined enough that pain no longer controls your direction. Read that again mentally. Weak people change direction based on emotions. Strong people maintain direction despite emotions. That difference creates entirely different lives. And once you understand this deeply, you stop wasting years trying to fix people who don't want to change. You stop chasing closure from emotionally unavailable minds. You stop explaining yourself endlessly to people committed to misunderstanding you. You simply move forward, quietly, calmly, relentlessly. That's why the strongest people often become quieter over time. Not because they lost passion, because they gained clarity. They understand that real growth happens privately first. In discipline nobody sees, in boundaries nobody applauds, in lonely mornings where motivation doesn't exist, but consistency does. That's where your future is built, not in inspiration, in repetition. And eventually, that repetition creates a person the world cannot easily shake anymore. A person who no longer panics over rejection, no longer chases validation, no longer fears solitude, no longer abandons themselves for attention. That person becomes dangerous. Not dangerous through aggression, dangerous through stability. Because emotionally stable people cannot be manipulated easily. You cannot bait them with attention. You cannot control them through silence. You cannot destabilize them with opinions. Their center remains intact. And in a world addicted to emotional chaos, that level of internal control becomes rare power. So stop waiting for permission to become stronger. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for closure. Stop waiting for people to finally realize your value. Build anyway. Build the body. Build the discipline. Build the habits. Build the standards. Build the mindset. Build the life that no longer depends on external validation to feel meaningful. Because one day, people will notice the change in you, not because you announced it, because your energy became undeniable, your calm became different, your focus became different, your standards became different, your presence became different. And the most powerful part? You won't even need their recognition anymore. That's freedom. Comment below, I master myself. And if this video spoke to something deep inside you, subscribe to Silent Authority. Because here, while we are not creating emotionally weak men addicted to motivation, we are building disciplined minds, unshakable focus, and silent power. Stay dangerous, stay disciplined, and never hand your peace to the outside world again.